There are folks out there that are promoting conspiracy theories that now have this incredibly powerful tool. It's a scary thought.
Welcome to the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage Show, and I'm your host, Richard Wray. My mission is to help entrepreneurs understand AI and use it to their advantage. Join me today where we dig deep with our guest and get you the best concepts and strategies. Today's special guest is Scott Thomsen. Scott is the Director of Communications and Public Affairs for the Ventura County Fire Department and previously worked as a journalist for 20 years for a variety of major news organizations. Today we're talking about AI. Pandora's box is open. Now what? Scott, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Richard.
Really great to have you here, Scott. And as I ask all my guests, where in the world are you?
So I'm in Camarillo, California, which is Southern California, just a little bit north of Los Angeles.
Very nice indeed. So, Scott, let's get into this. Let's go into a little bit about you, first of all. You've ended up working on the communication side of things, but you were in the news industry yourself for a very long time. Tell us about your history.
So I spent 20 years as a journalist, both as a reporter and an editor at a variety of news organizations around the country. And that industry has been going through a lot of shakedowns for quite a while. And at a certain point, I went through one too many reorganizations. And so at that point, I moved over into the communication space, and I've been doing this for about 15 years now. First with a publicly owned electric utility, and the last 3 years with the Ventura County Fire Department. And along the way, I also became the president of the National Association of Government Communicators, and I'm currently the immediate past president.
Interesting. So you've used your skills that you developed over that 20 years in the news industry to now communicate to the rest of the world and the news industry to ensure that the right messages are getting out.
Exactly. And, a key piece of it for me is still informing the public, because I believe that if you share the choices that are in front of people and give them a firm understanding of what their options are, then you trust them to make good choices.
Very interesting indeed. So these days, as you mentioned, the news industry, especially the newspaper industry, has gone through so many reorganizations, and it's been a very challenging industry to be in, no doubt. I've seen it myself when I've been working at, say, news organizations in the TV industry. So, challenging scenarios. And now we've got AI. Now we've got things happening where content can be generated very quickly, relatively easily. And as we stated in the title of today's show, Pandora's box is open. Give me your take on this.
So if you look back just in my lifetime, we've gone from film at 11, which was the one story that a professional network news organization was going to produce moving pictures for. They typically shot that in the morning on film, chemically processed it, dried it, cut that tape, that film by hand, and taped it together into producing one news segment that wouldn't appear on TV until 11 p.m. that night. Today, just about every single one of us, can pull out our cell phone and broadcast live to the world. That has been a remarkable change in technology over just a short period of time. Now we're entering a whole new era, though, because it's not about taking live video or taking photos and sharing them of reality, but we are entering an era where we can create whatever our mind dreams up and make it look real. And while there are plenty of folks out there that will use that technology, to advance worthy causes and share information just more effectively, we have to recognize that there are others out there that don't have those same good intentions. And so I come to this kind of like Jeff Goldblum's character in Jurassic Park, Dr. Ian Malcolm. where he told the scientists, it's like, you guys spent so much time wondering whether you could do this, you didn't stop to ask whether you should do this. And at this point, Pandora's box is open, and we've tossed this incredibly powerful tool out into the world with no instruction manual, no guidelines, no rules, really. And so it's kind of like handing a Ferrari 15-year-old kid that just got his learner's permit and, hoping that he's not going to run it off the road. There are folks out there that, are promoting conspiracy theories and other misinformation, disinformation campaigns that now have this incredibly powerful tool at their, at their use. It's a scary thought, because while we could always, for at least 10, 20 years now, you had things like Photoshop and other things. And even going back further than that, you could generate, computer assisted images and the like, but this took movie studios and sound sets and, imagination, light and engineering, geniuses to make these things happen. And now, in just a matter of minutes, anyone, sitting in their basement can create the same quality of content. And we've already seen this starting to come forward.
So what are the examples that you're seeing that concern you at the moment? Because I'll give you a simple example on my side. I was experimenting with a new Google phone. You say the Pixel 8 Pro, and the new AI software in there lets me grab a photo, and if there's two people sat on a bench, I can move one person left or right to make them closer to the other person or further away, and it's seamless. And that used to take huge amounts of effort, as you say. I mean, even back to the days when, we're both old enough to remember when people used to literally film something and, as you say, cut it, mask things, all these sorts of things. What are the ones that are concerning you the most right now?
Well, so just a couple of the quick examples that we've seen pop out. Tom Hanks had to come out and, ask his supporters not to believe a video that was being bounced about using his likeness. We've seen a political candidate here in the United States being shown surrounded by happy Black voters, trying to indicate a presence there that probably doesn't mirror reality. We've seen, even after the October 7th terrorist attacks into Israel, almost immediately afterwards, we saw manipulated images of explosions behind Palestinians in a way that was presenting this as if there was an attack already underway. There has been a military action since then, but at the time presenting something that had yet to happen, and presenting it as if it were true. And so we're taking fictions and dressing them up and presenting them as if this was reality. And it's very easy to do because the tools are so compelling at this point that you're going to easily be able to deep fake a whole lot of folks. And the volume of backstory that can be created now to support a conspiracy theory is massive, so that in just a matter of hours, you can create multiple websites with, all kinds of backstory linking together, claiming to support the falsehood that you've put out there.
I think there's a grand irony that Tom Hanks, who was in Forrest Gump and was inserted into historical scenes, is now worried about how this has been done. But to follow your point, that was 30 years ago and took immense technical effort. And it was an absolute revelation at the time. And now we can just do it on our phones.
Right. And at the time, it was being presented as a movie where you're going for, you recognize that this is a fiction that you are walking into for entertainment purposes. It's not being passed off as reality. And, the virtual reality nature of things is now being presented as if it was real.
So from an educational point of view, how do we engage with the public to say there are going to be things out there that aren't real? Don't be fooled.
Right. I mean, there is an educational component to this, and that's the challenge for all of us to figure out how to make folks more aware of the rapid advancement here, because part of this is that the acceleration that is taking place is so quick that it's difficult even for people who are paying attention to keep up with it. There's that old meme about, don't believe everything that you read on the internet, or if I saw it on the internet, it must be true, quote Abraham Lincoln. But even with that level of awareness, some of these are so good that it's hard to filter through. And so we have to turn our skeptic, sensitivity up a little bit higher. And unfortunately, that has a corrosive effect on our discourse, because now you're having to question everything that's out there. And it makes it more difficult.
So when I see some of the examples that we talked about, and, I say politicians in places that they shouldn't be, or events happening, how much of this is actually just speaking to the cognitive bias that maybe people who are looking at this, and that, it's proving a point that they believe in, or want to believe in, whether it's true or not?
That's exactly what it's being used for, because, you can create falsehoods that play to a certain group of people, and it provides the confirmation bias to what they already believe, even if the material is false. And one of the biggest challenges psychologically is that after you're invested in something, you see yourself as a good person. And so when something that you believe in starts going sideways, you have a hard time believing it, because you're invested in this and you're a good person. And it leaves the door open for being more willing to buy into false narratives that are generated that align with the position that you've previously taken. And it's a very powerful component of how we operate as human beings, that gets played upon by folks that use that kind of messaging and back it up with these false narratives.
So how do we break down that challenge of people doubling down when they know that they're wrong? Because one of the things I've read about in the past is when people have been conned and people have pointed out to them, you are being conned right now. Rather than admit that they've made a mistake, they'll actually double down and start to defend the conman or woman. So how do we do that when it's in the media age?
That's the hardest piece to it. And so what I encourage folks to do is to look for your trusted sources, right? And are you able to confirm this in more than one place? And not just from the place that has been, feeding you the originating story, right? Hey, that's the spot that's hardest, and getting that, even that is getting more easier to fake in this environment, because now instead of just creating one thread and posting it into a social media environment, I can create 3 websites all sharing a similar version of the story and create fake authenticity behind it, making it look more real than it actually is. So it's important to know who are your trusted sources of information. What am I hearing directly from the agency that is responsible for this particular program, for example? What are mainstream media outlets saying about it? Is there any difference in the coverage between those outlets? Social media itself has become just, here's what the latest commentary is, not necessarily a set of facts. It has just become, people have diluted and blurred the line between fact and opinion, and folks' opinions out there as if it really happened, whether it did or not.
There's the oft misattributed line of, if you tell a lie enough times, it becomes a truth. Is it literally now a case of AI and the modern techniques that we have for disputing content, it's just turned that particular line up to 11.
Absolutely. It's a force multiplier for fake information, because you can drive it from so many places, and you can make changes to the language, slight changes to the language, giving it a slightly different voice to be able to drop it into a different channel and, make it appear like it's coming from yet another source that reinforces your initial lie. That's the challenge with it. It's incredibly powerful and an incredibly powerful tool, but as with any tool, it's the user that, is responsible for how it gets directed.
The comment you made earlier on about trusted sources. When we look at the trusted sources, let's take the US, you tune into certain TV channels, you read certain newspapers, look at certain websites. You take some channels, so for the sake of argument, Fox News versus MSNBC, and the message on the same event can be very, very different. There's a bias there. So there's a lot of bias being kind of, backed up. And as you say, the whole point of opinion appears as news. What's your advice to anybody to be able to define what is true and what isn't? Because when you've got very slickly produced, very talented people, regardless of which organization they're in, delivering these messages, it can be hard to discern truth from fiction.
Absolutely. This is one of my biggest criticisms about my former profession, which is that we have these very slickly produced opinion shows that are really just an hour commentary, and they're being packaged as if they were news, where the news hour with this just straight delivery, back to the Walter Cronkite days of, and the way it was, has gone missing in many spaces, and we're poorer for that. We need to, do a better job of labeling what we're doing as this is the news hour and this is the commentary. But broadcast media in particular has blurred that line a great deal, and it is challenging to sift through that. I encourage folks to look at some of the independent rating, reports that come out in terms of like where on the spectrum different, organizations lie, and those that, cut it right down the middle as best as possible are probably the ones you want to lean into. But also, even if Fox News or MSNBC, which are kind of on the opposite ends of the, spectrum there, if one of those is your go-to, take a look at where some of the other news organizations are landing on that same topic, to give yourself a little bit more of the breadth of what's being discussed around it, so that you start to drive a little bit, closer towards the center of the matter, rather than, just the polar extremes of, perspective.
So what I'm hearing there is, don't just listen to a single voice. As people often quote, do your own research, but try and make sure these are solid sources, not just somebody on Facebook or somebody on X or Twitter.
Exactly, because especially in social media, the algorithms that drive that create a thought bubble. You're just getting back what you put out there, and it's an echo chamber. So your perception of the broader conversation is that, well, everybody agrees with me because this is what my feed is giving me. And so it takes a little more work to, get that perspective and see the issue, but it ought to be clear, but has also been distorted in this, that everybody has a right to their own opinion, but you don't have the right to your own facts, because what took place is what took place. The challenge that we have with AI right now is that AI can create an alternate universe,
multiple,
that can present something to you that didn't happen. and it's not reality, but it looks like it. And, that's the latest thing that we have to sift through in this evolution.
So, following the metaphor of Pandora's box, all the evils of the world come out of the box, but at the bottom of the box, there's hope. So, using AI, yes, bad actors are certainly using it in negative ways, but how can the good actors in the world, how can they actually grasp AI and amplify their message?
So, a couple of things that I've been looking at this is that for starters, authenticity really matters. And even with digital natives that are in our youngest generation right now, you still see folks looking for messaging that comes directly from a person that is meaningful and empathetic and connects with them on a human level, that says, this person gets my situation, understands me, and I'm willing to follow them. And so I encourage everyone that even as you're using these tools, you have to have real people being the moderators and the editors and the reviewers of any content that is generated this way, so that it stays true to your organization or the individual, that it's in that voice and that it speaks authentically for what you truly believe as you put it out there. Because any gap there will be identified quickly, and the response will be harsh and fast. I look at what took place with Sports Illustrated, which at one point was the greatest publication on the planet. And it had struggled in a digital environment, but it was still operating. And then reports started coming out that using AI to write game stories instead of real people. And within a matter of weeks, they went from trying to keep their head above water to filing for bankruptcy and laying off nearly the entire staff. And that's because the followers of that great publication, grew up with it as being a place of great writing by real people. And to see AI used to create that content whole cloth, even if it was only on the game stories, took away the reality and the authenticity of what they were reading and consuming. I can get my sports scores from just about anywhere, but I go to Sports Illustrated to really get a deeper level of what took place during this game. And they lost the authenticity of their brand by going that route without letting people know that that's what they were doing. And so if you are going to use these tools, you need to be clear about what you're doing with them, when you're using them, and how. The other thing that I encourage folks to do is that to recognize that while all of these bad actors are out there, you have this moment to prepare for when somebody comes after you using this technology. Mm-hmm. You should be building plans today for how you will manage the reputational crisis that you are going to face when you get a reputational attack being driven by AI-generated content.
So how do you go about using AI yourself? Because as you are involved with so many organizations and governing bodies and advisory bodies at a senior level, you obviously stand out as somebody that people should be looking to. So what are the techniques that you use with AI?
So, I myself have stayed more in the space of still doing this in an authentic, direct, communications pattern with me creating the content. And I still have a team in place that, enables me to do that. Some of the promoters of the technology will point to but this is going to enable you to do so much higher level work with your time. Is that what that really means is when the bean counters get a hold of this, you're going to have 2 people doing the work of 12 you're not going to be getting to any of the higher level work because you're going to be cranking out the same stuff that you were before, only AI is going to be doing most of it. What I am encouraging folks to do, and what I'm using my position, right now to do, is to encourage folks to put policies in place for how their organizations will use the technology, right? That there should always be, like at the most basic level, there should always be a human being to do a full review, revision, and final edits before any content is distributed. Because as good as it is, and it's really good and getting better, you are still gonna bump into word choice that's not quite in the voice that your executive might be in, or not quite in line with how your organization would present itself. You need somebody that is familiar with that voice to be able to keep you in an authentic space. Okay, so that's level one. Secondly, you need to be prepared to share with people any any content that is created using AI technology. You need to disclose that has been part of your developmental process so that folks understand where it came from. I think all of us can recognize that when we get the handwritten note from somebody that is close to us, that is meaningful, especially in today's digital age. When you get the, same message, or you get a message from the same person, but it's digital, it's not as personal. And even if the person signs it and it was a message that was, came from the Hallmark shop, it's like, okay, well, nice, you picked me out a card. AI is like, not even going to the card shop to get the message. You just, having it whip something out, and, hey, I'll sign it and send it off. You don't get the same, level of connection. And so we need to be aware of when we choose to use it. And there should be some times where it may not even be a good tool to use as the first draft. When you are dealing with a death or, some other kind of traumatic experience for a community or a family, that really needs to be heartfelt and authentic from the person who's delivering it.
So, Scott, if there was one piece of advice that you would want everybody to take away from today's session about how they can use AI and use it in a positive way to communicate, or potentially to be able to spot when there's misinformation being communicated, what would it be?
AI is a fabulous tool for analysis. It is, amazing what it can do in crunching data. In this creative space, it is super powerful, but we haven't totally figured out where the right spacing is for how to do it in a way that people recognize and accept, right? And that's what we've got to figure out. So in the meantime, just remember that authenticity matters, human connection matters, honesty matters, and whatever you produce using this tool, make sure that you're transparent in what you're doing, particularly with your audience, because that's how you show them respect. And that matters. If you're going to hide how something was created, you're already being disingenuous with the people that you're trying to talk with. And if you want, and the bottom line in communications is trust. So you're either going to be on the side of truth, transparency, and honesty in sharing the message, or you're going to be one of the folks that is running the con that you described earlier. and, using, means to manipulate opinion, based on falsehoods. And so, I look at that as a threat to our, worldwide communities and, the divisions that, take place, around different, positions and beliefs. And I get back to that spot of saying, like, we can agree to disagree on any particular policy or issue or matter, but still come at this from the same set of facts and treat each other as human beings. What I believe that, our greatest loss over the last 15 years or so, is this sense that we've created so many thought bubbles and echo chambers, and that if you don't agree with 100% of what I've just said in this, strict orthodoxy, then you're evil and you're not even a person. And I can now, diminish anything that you say, rather than finding ways to talk with folks where we talk through differences and we understand that it's legitimate for a person to come to a different conclusion than I did, with the same set of facts because of where they came from, and be able to have consideration for that person's needs, and desires. We've lost a lot of that along the way. And as we move forward, my hope is that we can use some of the analytics on the side of AI to separate out the fact from reality, the fact from disinformation, that we can use it for fact checking, that we can use it to help us find, what the truth is, so that we can then form educated opinions for each one of us, even if they differ, and have a more civilized conversation about it.
That is fantastic advice. Scott, tell me, where can people find you, and where should they be looking to find some of the work that you're doing?
So you can see some of the work that I'm doing with the National Association of Government Communicators at nagc.com. And for my work with the Ventura County Fire Department, we're at vcfd.org.
Scott, fantastic conversation today. I wish it could keep going, but we have to pull this then. So thank you for your time today.
I appreciate it, Richard. Great being with you.
Well, that's a wrap on another awesome guest episode for the Evolvepreneur AI Advantage show. Just before you go, if you'd like this episode, we would be very grateful for a 5-star review. Please also consider recommending the show to a friend or two. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes at aiadvantage.show right now. Until next time, I'm Richard Wray, and if you're an entrepreneur, get the AI Advantage today.